A massive warning was just issued from inside the global financial system. We are headed straight for QE to the power of X. Words from a global financial summit in Singapore this week, confirming not only that the Fed is firing up the printing press, but also what's coming next for stocks, the dollar, and gold, which at $4,000 an ounce is just getting started. But not only that, confirming everything we have been saying about what is happening today, what comes next, and how to protect yourself. So let's start with gold and work our way to the Fed because we have so much to cover today and it is all connected. But first things first, gold hitting $4,000 an ounce, an all-time high. This is gold screaming at us that the global monetary reset is accelerating. It is accelerating fast. And if you are not positioned with physical gold and silver, physical, tangible, that you can hold, that you own, now is the time to do so. It is not too late. Let me tell you that much. It is not too late. In fact, gold is just getting started because unfortunately we have a lot more pain to go in our current financial system, right? We are living through a monetary reset. If you don't understand what that means, I will do my best to explain it. You can also watch some of my other videos, but let's dive in. So I'm not a big fan of mainstream media, but even when they start to tell the truth, you know the illusion is shattering, right? Even they can't continue to lie. This was an article I saw yesterday saying gold rally points to eroding faith in central banks worldwide. And that's what I'm saying here. This is far bigger than FOMO or a rate cut. We are talking about a worldwide, a global monetary reset. Faith is eroding in central banks across the world in fiat currencies, right? The dollar is nothing more than a paper promise. It's not backed by anything real or tangible, unlike physical gold, which is why fiat currencies are continually being devalued and debased. They print more and more and more. And what happens? Each existing unit of currency is worth less and less and less. Now, this gold shift did not happen overnight. It's been in the works for a long time. But in the last few years, we've really seen it take off. Why? Well, this breaks it into 3 chapters, which I thought were interesting. The first one was after Western nations froze Russia's foreign currency reserves. So what happened back in 2022? Well, we know that U.S. treasuries are the foundation of the global system, right? The dollar is the global reserve currency. But after Russia invaded Ukraine, the U.S. froze and seized the Russian U.S. reserves. Well, what does that tell the rest of the world? It tells them that dollars are not safe. So what did they do? They went in search of something that others could not seize and began piling into gold. Because if you're a central bank or you're an individual out there watching and you have physical gold, no one can take it with the push of a button, right? That's what happened with those U.S. treasuries. Now, the second charge came this past April with President Trump's trade war, which undermined faith in the U.S. as a stabilizer of the global economic system and the dollar's preeminent place in that system. For far too long, many people out there have said, oh, well, the dollar will never go anywhere because it's the global reserve currency. It's king dollar, right? You can't dethrone it. But that is not true. If you push nations hard enough and enough of them come together, like the BRICS alliance, and they say, hey, this isn't making sense. This isn't benefiting us. What are we doing here with this system? They're going to go looking for alternatives. And guess what? They found it with gold. Okay. Now, the third phase began this late August when the Federal Reserve signaled it would cut rates to counteract weak labor markets, despite inflation running above its 2% target. Okay. I'm not going to sit here and tell you the labor market is strong because we know it is abysmal. That being said, the Fed had to decide, right? It has this dual mandate. Do we cut rates to support the labor market or do we raise rates to fight inflation? Well, they chose the labor market. And I'm not here to say whether they chose right or wrong. I'm just here to say that if you are continuing to cut rates and inflation is rising, as well as QE is on the horizon, which we're going to get to in a minute, well, then you know what's going to happen to the value of the dollar. It is going to be worth less and less and less, right? That is what happens here. Inflation is not just prices rising. It's that it takes more units of currency to buy the same thing. That is what the American people are living through, and not just the American people, worldwide. This is, again, a global movement away from fiat and into gold. But none of this is by accident, right? This isn't something we just stumbled into. This is intentional. And in fact, this article even hints at it. It says here that when central banks shift their priority from inflation to helping the Treasury, it's called fiscal dominance, and it usually leads to inflation. Now, what are they talking about here? They're talking about ways that we can lower the deficit, right? So if the Fed lowers rates, it makes servicing the debt cheaper. And not only that, if you have enough inflation, guess what happens to the debt? It effectively inflates away the debt. Now, that benefits the U.S., but guess who it hurts? Not only the American people, you and I, whose dollars are worth less, but it hurts foreign nations who are holding said debt. Maybe they get paid back nominally, but it is worth less, right? And that is, again, this global wake up that's happening. And this is why central banks are piling into gold. And now we have more retail piling into gold as well, because people are realizing, oh my gosh, if I hold these dollars, they are always going to be worth less than they were yesterday. Whereas gold acts as a true store of value, right? This is your insurance policy. This is your protection against what is happening right now in this wild world. But let's talk more about the Fed, QE, and the stock market, because they're all connected. And again, of course, what's coming next. Now, this was an interesting article that outlined an investment management summit that happened in Singapore this week, where a chief investment officer, Jeffrey Jensen-Bakij, said, and I quote, "If they are in a bubble, they being risk assets, and they burst, is the Fed actually going to do QE to the power of X again? I think there's a strong likelihood of that happening, which would provide a cushion for the commodity." Now, what's he talking about by the commodity? He's talking about gold, right? What he's essentially saying is that there's a lot of people piling into risk assets right now, stocks. And I think people are confused. How is it that the stock market's going up, but then you have gold going up at the same time? Historically, it's one or the other, right? Depending on how people are feeling. The reason he says that there is a quote unquote confusing concurrent surge is because there is a belief that policy is going to come to the rescue of anything and everything. And you know what? They probably are right. Daddy Fed is going to step in and fire up the printing press, because what are they going to do? Let everything fail? Let everything come crashing down? But here's the thing. So maybe some people make it out okay. Maybe there's profit to be made in the stock market for sure. But then what happens? What happens when the value of the dollar and all associated dollar-denominated assets are going to be worth less because the Fed is stepping in and once again firing up the printing press, enacting a bailout, QE, whatever you want to call it? It has the same end goal, which is that it might save the system. It's papering over the system is a better way to put it. But it's ultimately hurting your and my wallets. Now, as far as what this means for gold, I mean, we know that gold, again, like I said, is just getting started. Now you have these mainstream analysts and big banks coming out, upping their predictions. Goldman Sachs saying that it could trade near $5,000 an ounce, right? Or they're saying it could go even higher, theorizing that investors currently holding stocks and bonds could begin to diversify much more into a smaller gold market. Now, the reason he's saying a smaller gold market, and they use ETFs as an example, which is its own thing, but essentially what they're saying is that when you look at the US, it is still woefully behind compared to maybe some Asian countries or, individuals in other countries where the daily household is going to have your gold. Today in the United States, a lot of people still have not woken up to the realization that this is true money and that the stocks or the bonds they're invested in are risk assets. Not enough people out there are diversified and positioned not only to protect themselves today, but for what is coming next. He goes on to say that people are looking for ways to effectively de-dollarize or de-risk their portfolios vis-a-vis sovereign risk. What does he mean by that? Well, what he's saying is that, again, people don't trust the dollar. People don't trust U.S. debt. And listen, central banks, as we went over earlier, already been feeling this way for a long time. For the last few years, they've been doing everything they can to get out of the dollar and into gold. Well, now more citizens in the United States are waking up to that, especially because inflation is substantially above target in all forecasts for next year. And it's part of the reason the dollar's depreciated by about 10% in the first half of the year. It is the single biggest decline in the US dollar in 6 months in 50 years. In 50 years, right? This is absolutely insane when you think about what's going on. And again, this isn't just one person saying this. This isn't just one analyst, one bank, one nation. right? The world is waking up and realizing that the dollar's days are numbered. It doesn't mean that the dollar's crashing tomorrow, but I always ask people, do you think the dollar is going to be worth more tomorrow than it is today? Do you think that the Fed is going to stop printing? Do you trust the government to make decisions in your interest over their own or over special interests that they might have? Most of us all answer the same way. And if you answer those questions the same way, well, then you know that it's time to be protected with physical gold and silver outside of this failing system, outside of the dollar. Make sure you are positioned, because this is going to be what protects your wealth, not only your wealth, but wealth for future generations, right? We're talking generational wealth here. Gold has withstood the test of time. And again, if you are not in position yet, it is time to do so. If you have any questions at all, call us. If you are ready to get protected with physical gold and silver, we are a full service gold and silver dealer here at ITM Trading. We have been helping people just like you for 30 years. You can call us at the number below. You can click the link in the description and set up a time that works best for you. You can do the same thing by scanning the QR code. And if you want to learn more about physical gold and silver as well, we have an incredible gold and silver guide. It is completely free. You can download it by, again, scanning that QR code, or there is a link in the description to get your copy of the guide. Again, a completely free download, whatever works best for you. My hope is just that everyone is prepared for what is coming next, because I've been shouting it from the rooftops for the last few years. We are seeing it happen really fast right now, and it's not too late, but again, do not wait, right? It is time to get in position now. So call us at the number below, or again, set up a time that works best for you. And in the meantime, I so appreciate you being here. I'm Taylor Kenny with ITM Trading, your trusted source for all things gold, silver, and lifelong wealth protection. Until next time.